Good morning, everyone. Can we have the presentation? Yeah. First of all, I must admit that as I've been hearing since morning the examples of great innovation, there is a sense of pride that I feel. As I look forward, I'll say there is it's a childlike excitement that I see, given the kind of opportunity that is in front of us. But there is also a sense of humbling experience, given the fact that we will need to fundamentally reset our ambition. And I'll not spend a lot of time on those words, but as we started looking at ER&D as a discipline, we said that there are essentially 3 layers we should look at. Number 1 is that in engineering R&D, how is the world investing in? And what is driving that kind of a growth? We realized that there are 5 mega trends which will drive the growth in future. We have seen quite a bit of movement on the digital engineering. Even today, it is about 40% of the overall ER&D spend globally. But what we expect is that 2 to 3 more will actually play an even bigger role. Number 1, as we speak about, is the AI coming in, where a lot of engineering will start using AI. If there is a demand aspect of AI, as well as there is how the design is done, is fundamentally going to change. Second is, as we think about a lot of our engineering businesses, the products are turning to services, and services want to actually have products in place. And last but not the least, is also very important to realize that how we think about the population pyramid is the word that we use, globally is changing very, very fast. Now, what we did was that to ensure that we have a very, very robust view of where the investment is going to be, we actually did survey nearly 300 CXOs globally across the sectors. And to ensure that there is no bias, we actually did it double blind. So we did not know the names of the people we are surveying. We had a specialized agency do that for us. And they never knew that we are going to use this for estimating the market size. So it's a as unbiased view that we can get. What is very interesting is that as we speak today, the total business ER&D essentially means what percentage of my revenue today I am investing in ER&D. If I put together for top 3,000 companies globally, that is roughly around $1.7 trillion. That is amazingly high. What is even more important is that we realized that over the last 2 to 3 years, coming out of pandemic, most of the businesses realize that unless and until they are increasing their ER&D intensity, which means they're spending more and more on ER&D as a percentage of revenue, they will not be able to sustain, let alone become leaders in their sectors. So what you see is that there is a very significant growth we will see in the total ER&D spend, and it accelerates after 2027, which is not surprising, I think so. What is important is that as we talk about today, we all talk about that the growth estimates for major economies are being revised downwards by the major financial institutions. We also specifically asked that how do you look at ER&D for next year? Because that is something all of us will face in a couple of months. The answer is 70% said that we want to retain the same intensity and also increase it. This says that people are taking a much longer term goal at ER&D, and it's not something that has to be like looked at from a day-to-day basis. This is a split of the kind of spend that is happening. I'll just call out 3 sectors which in the morning we also spoke about. Number 1 is automotive. The kind of investment that is going through, the kind of skill set that it requires fundamentally changing. Huge opportunity for India to actually be part of that in an even greater way. We obviously are one of the powerhouses for that already. The second is the entire focus on medical tech. And in medical tech, we want to focus on advanced imaging, consumer-grade medical devices, which talk about preventive as well as continuous monitoring. Software retains its space. Software has been big traditionally. We see that continuing the kind of transition, even going forward. What we can do is that maybe if you can cover Snehil in terms of how this will get sourced.
So I think as Amit mentioned, we have a very large investment that firms are making in their ER&D spend, and that investment itself is growing, and the intensity of that is growing despite the headwinds that some people foresee. Now, the other change that's very important to note is that while the investment intensity is growing, the portion of that investment intensity that will actually lead to sourcing that from third-party providers or from their own captives, essentially outside of their HQ, is also growing. So I think that number will, as you can see, will grow from roughly about 200 billion to about 775 billion of this large number that Amit kind of mentioned, which in itself is a growth of roughly about 16% from a CAGR perspective, and grows from about, as a share, from about 15% to 24%. So what that means is that, while the mega trends that you heard a lot of folks talk about in the morning, Kishore spoke about it, Amit outlined that, and that's leading to greater investment intensity in ER&D. The fact that people are looking to then leverage, capacity and capability outside of home office is growing increasingly as well. Now, what that does is that allows India to be far better positioned to be able to capture part of this sourcing ability. And I may say India, I mean both what we would call engineering service providers and their own captives that are sitting. So on this chart, which is a chart of showing essentially on the y-axis the innovation index, which is measured on the x-axis is a proxy for the cost of talent. You'll see that India is in the far left in the bottom. So the circles that are lower are high innovative, and circles that are to the left are lower in cost, right? What that means is India is uniquely positioned to be able to provide a high innovation workforce, but also a workforce that has great advantage from a cost of delivery perspective. Now, you'll also see there are other countries in the region and around that are also vying for the same investment dollar, right? And these countries are, like Malaysia, Turkey, Hungary, even Vietnam and Philippines, for that matter, are doing that. But what differentiates India from all of them is one of the words starting with an S, scale, right? The ability to bring engineering talent, several multiple times more than other countries is what's important. The second most important factor is that India can do that and provide that scale across sectors. So while you see some specialization happening in certain countries, for example, Malaysia in oil and gas, right? India has the ability to create similar capability across the sectors that we have. So that's the other advantage that India brings to this, right? So in that context, if you take all of these, which is the fact that investment intensity in ER&D is growing, of that intensity, the ER&D sourcing is growing as well. Now, what portion of that sourcing can India capture? And our analysis and our survey shows that we expect this number to go up from roughly about 45 billion to about 170 billion in 2030, right? So more than a 3x number that will grow up, right? And as a percentage of that sourcing share, we're roughly at about 17% today, and that number will go up to 22%. Now, what that means is, where do we play? We've also taken a view, and you will see this in the report, to say, if all of this is going to happen, what are the sectors and the countries that India as a nation can go and target? So, all the verticals are the HQ regions where those countries belong. The horizontals are your sectors. So if you take the first column, for example, Japan, right? We're seeing that Japan, automotive, consumer electronics, industrial are big areas that we believe India can make a strong play for. Why is that? On the bottom, you'll see some markers of people. As you heard, there's a global trend of the fact that there is a reducing fertility rate across the world, which means that the number of people from a population perspective are not growing, and there's an aging workforce that is coming in many of these countries that you see, in that there, right? This creates a roadmap for engineering service providers and for all of us here in this room who work for many different captives as well to say, here is where we can go out and find value for us to grow up the value chain, right? So this is an example of where we can look at, right? Now, how do you do that, right? And I think while the report goes into a lot of detail, the two main areas that are important for us to consider are what we call skill synchronicity and the emerging geo-contenders, right? So I think on the skill side, I think you heard a lot of conversation this morning from Kishore and the conversation you heard when KSP was doing the fireside chat and so was Devjani, that there is a big focus that we need to place on research, on applied research, on curriculum that needs to be done, on industry, academia, partnerships, on sometimes even simply being able to be aware of the resources available, which is also a challenge. So being able to make sure we have a comprehensive plan to be able to handle what is required to be able to capture that market. While we have scale and we have people, there is an element of our people, trained well enough to be able to capture this. Is there a need today to put people through a finishing school to be able to be as productive as their engineering counterparts in Western economies, for example? So there's a massive element for us to be able to consider to say, how can we bridge that gap? The second point is the fact that there are emerging geo-contenders, like I mentioned. And even though they may not have our scale, they do have, at times, far more agility being able to go after certain sectors. And that is because there is stronger government policies. In fact, countering India's policies, they're coming up with more creative ways to entice investment into their countries. So not only do we see this as a challenge, for India to be the knowledge economy capital of the world, competition is severe, right? We cannot take things for granted, and we must move forward to be able to address that. So to me, it's a question of 3 S's. There is skill, there is scale, and there is speed. And so while India has all the 3, it has to make sure that we are moving forward on all of those 3 vectors, with a lot of vigor. And I think, we'd love to hear comments when you download the report, on the website, to come back to us. Before I end, I did want to actually thank, the teams that worked and put this together. From the nasscom Insights team, Vandana, I think she's here. If you could just wave. Achyuta is not here. I know Siva is here somewhere. Siva. Okay, and then we obviously have KSV, and we have strategic inputs from Devjani and Sangeeta. And from the BCG team, I have Nanda, I have Jyoti, a colleague Aditya, Amit, and myself, and 2 of our colleagues that are not here, Ankush and Rajiv. So thank you very much for this, and hope you enjoy the report.
For more content on tech and leadership, subscribe to nasscom YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.